Good morning to you and happy first day of summer. It is a beautiful, glorious day, not too hot yet, but I think it is going to get hotter during the later of today. It's been wonderful. I've already been out working in the garden this morning. I'm in here for a cup of tea. I'm doing some research. I'm getting ready to share a herbal plant remedy that's common here with you guys, and I thought I would have to do some research just to be sure that I'm sharing with you the proper thing that needs to be shared. But of course, we're going to have a much needed cup of tea this morning. So I'm going to get the teapot out of the cabinet. I like these little electric teapots because you're not heating up the kitchen with your traditional teapot. Right over here's the traditional teapot. I have to turn the eye of the stove on to heat up water in that. Make sure I got water in this. But with the little electric teapot right there, it's a whole lot less heating up the kitchens, and I really like that. So this morning we're going to get us a cup of morning tea. Before it gets too hot this morning, I just go through the tea cabinet every morning, see what it is that I like. Of course, I've got purchased teas, I've got teas that were gifts, and I've got things that I harvest that I use to mix in my teas. So I have no shortage of tea. This cabinet smells so good, and it is a wonderful little spot in my life. I love opening this tea cabinet, and I love smelling all that good tea in there. It is delicious. Now it's going to be hot here before we know it this morning. Today's tea choices are going to be some, this is actually English afternoon tea. Let me put this back and get a breakfast tea. Since it is morning, I'll just squeeze that right back, and I'll come over here and get one of these English breakfast teas. It's a little better. We got breakfast tea. This one's in tea bags, so it'll be easier for me to just plop it right into my cup. My friend Sharon bought me this tea, and it has been wonderful. I have so enjoyed it. We'll fill my little tea ball up with some white clover and some of this peach tea. If you remember, peach tea is one of my favorites. It's peach tea and black tea. And as you can see, I've got my teas that I grow and that I mix, my loose leaf tea in this diffuser, and I've got a tea bag in here. Doesn't bother me a bit to mix both of them, to mix the teas that I need. And I got my big old, there's no such thing as too much honey, poo cup this morning. His face sums it up for a cup of tea for me. I'm going to let this steep for about 4 minutes, and I'll bring it with me. I need to be in here making some iced tea, because it'll be hot. We'll need some tea. It only takes a few minutes. I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and make steep a little pot so that I can make a gallon of iced tea for when I come in from the garden today. I've got a little pot here. I'm just going to throw in a tea bag, pour the hot water in. I'm going to let this steep till I come in. Then I can mix up some iced tea. You know, it's really easy to prepare your tea for the day if you drink iced tea. It's one of the easiest things to do. I've been studying in my book this morning. Been looking over some things. I've got a few things I want to share with you out in the garden. And I always refer back to this to be sure to be accurate. I've shared this book with you before, and one of my favorite books that helps me in herbal use is The Science and Practice of Herbal Medicine, Medical Herbalism by David Hoffman. So this is a reference book that I use often whenever I do reference herbs. And I reference herbs that I've used all my life. I didn't have this book growing up. We grew up with a lot of herbs and using herbs. And I now refer back to this book, since I've had this book, on any herb that I use, because it'll tell you all you need to know about it. Now this is the name of this herb that I'm going to share with you. We grew up calling it pleurisy root. Some people call it butterfly weed. I'm going to take you out here and show you this beautiful herb. And I have not used this herb. I don't use this herb. But I looked up the scientific name of this herb and all the pages that it's on here in this herbal book. And of course, if you're pregnant, there's a warning. If you're pregnant or looking to be pregnant, I'd be very careful. It says the following herbs are listed in the Botanical Safety Handbook as not to be used during pregnancy unless otherwise directed by an expert qualified in the appropriate use of this substance. Unfortunately, the authors do not adequately clarify whether inclusion in this safety category is based on actual clinical records or on theoretical extrapolation from the in vitro studies on constituents. This limits the value of an otherwise excellent book. So it's telling you not to use it, but it's not really telling you why. That's what that's saying there. And here it is. This Asclepias tuberosa is on that list. So if you're pregnant, don't think about using this herb. Now we're going to go to the next page, and I will research every page that this herb is listed on in this book. This will be one of my sources of researching this herb. You know, that's always one of my tips. Always know what we got a cookie moment. He's going to help me research this morning. It's going to take me a minute to get here. While we're steeping our tea. And let's see what this is telling us right here. And looking over it, I have found the Asclepias tuberosa or pleurisy root right here. And it's a major anti-inflammatory herb. That's wonderful to know, isn't it? And then you can just follow out on this page. I make a little note card. See, on page 395 is telling us to not use this if you're pregnant. On page 488 is a major anti-inflammatory herb. This, I make little note cards, and it reminds me about these herbs. And when we turn to the next page of the book, 512, we'll find the herb that we are looking for, the Asclepias tuberosa or pleurisy root, and it tells us that it's a relaxing expectorant herb. So I note that down here on my card, and then we'll be finished with our little research here on our herbal book for the pleurisy root or the butterfly weed. Now I have notes that I've got from other sources, and I've got them wrote down here. And so that's how I do research on the herbs that I share with you, even if I have used that herb all of my life. Now I haven't used this particular herb personally for myself, because to me it's a little bit of a stronger herb than I've ever needed. I would just say that I would just mix up in the kitchen and use. Now, you know, I've shared with you before, my family has Native American. They're of Cherokee descent. The Granny Tate picture that I show you, my granny on my mother's side, that grandma is 50% Cherokee Indian, and then there was also quite a bit of Cherokee Indian on my dad's side. So I've shared with you that before, but the most knowledge I grew up with was on my mother's side. My mother's family never strayed far from the heritage that they grew up having, and this is the grandma that foraged, that knew herbs, and this is where I got a lot of my knowledge. She passed it down to my mom, and we grew up with it. We grew up using herbs and foraging, and this is the grandma that is 50% Cherokee Indian, and she lived to be 104. And she was such a wonderful person. I've shared with you before that she was a midwife in her area and really practiced herbalism, and a lot of people came to her for help when they needed it. And such a treasure to have her in our family. Now, having said all of that, I remember her using pleurisy root and telling us about pleurisy root, but I have never used pleurisy root for myself, and that's a judgment call on my part, because what this herb does, I feel like it's so serious that if I have any of these conditions, I won't be treating them myself. I'll definitely seek out a health care provider. I mean, pleurisy is actually, I think that's an infection in the fluid around your heart. Yes, you better believe that if I have any kind of problem with my heart, I'm seeking out a health care provider that is, schooled and knowledgeable in that area. Now, Asclepias tuberosa is a perennial herb in the milkweed family, and it has large, flat-topped clusters of bright orange flowers. I'm going to take you out there and show you this here in a minute. The leaves are lanceolate, late, or oblong and are alternate in arrangement. The plant is 1 to 2 feet tall. Ours is much bigger than that. Native Americans and pioneers used the plant to treat lung inflammations or pleurisy. In colonial America, dried leaves of butterfly weed and skunk cabbage were made into tea to treat chest inflammations. The root has been used medicinally for many years. However, there is a little scientific evidence to back up its purported benefits. Some potential benefits include helping drain excess fluid in the lungs, which can make it easier to breathe for someone who is experiencing a cough or congestion, and the roots should be harvested in the fall after the plant has gone to seed. Now let's go out here and look at this plant. Now, as you can see out here in the garden, I've got this pleurisy root, this butterfly weed, this Asclepias tuberosa. Got it growing right here in the garden, and this is it right here. It's an absolutely beautiful plant, isn't it? This is my husband's favorite flower. It's growing in our garden. We foraged this from an area of land and we brought it here, and it has done great right here in this area. We had a few other specimens that we moved around, but none of them fared. We lost them except this patch that's right here. Now you may be seeing this pleurisy root or this butterfly weed on the side of the road at this time of the year, because it's the time of the year that it blooms. There's passion flower growing in amongst it here. That's how this beautiful plant looks. And I've shared with you the uses. Now there's a lot of names. Here's a list of more common names. Butterfly milkweed, butterfly weed, chigger flower, chigger weed, orange milkweed, common butterfly weed, Indian paintbrush, Canada root, flux root, orange swallowwort, white root, and wind root. The Asclepias tuberosa, and it's pronounced Asclepias, so I've been saying it wrong. It has quite a few names right here, so it's a pretty common plant, very common in our area, native to North America, very beautiful, and worth having in your garden. Now I guess you could make a tea out of it to help, where it says here, the tea to treat lung inflammation or excess fluid in the lungs. I guess you could make a tea and it would help those areas. But I have other teas that also do that same thing. We know this has anti-inflammatory properties. It's got a lot of pollinators on it today. So it's good to know that this herb has major anti-inflammatory herb and a relaxing expectorant herb. So if you're coughing like crazy, I guess a small amount, I wouldn't be adverse to trying a small amount of this tea to see if it would help in an excessive coughing situation. Well, like I said before, I never really used the pleurisy root. My great-grandma, my grandma, and my mama used the pleurisy root, but I always just, if I had any kind of, lung irritation or anything like that, I just always turn to the mullein, and then I turn to the goldenrod. Those are two things that I would use, and echinacea and elderberry. those are the things I would use if I had any kind of, like I do kind of have now, an irritation, respiratory irritation, of a common kind, common cold. Or let's take a little tea. But that is definitely an herb that I have grew up hearing about. I have grew up learning to appreciate, but not one I ever used growing up. We used more mullein, more goldenrod, different things like that is what we would use to make tea out of if we had upper respiratory or any kind of inflammation, in our lungs. So this is something new as far as researching actually what that pleurisy root does. That's what Mama always called it. She called it pleurisy root, pleurisy root. She still calls it to that day. When I got to spend time with her, she was talking about the pleurisy roots blooming. Because when she was growing up, her great-grandma would have harvested that pleurisy root, and that would have been a part of her apothecary. It is a beautiful plant. I shared with you it's my husband's favorite plant in the garden. He tried so hard when we were foraging. We dug up several roots and transplanted it in different places in our garden. And that place that I showed you there in the garden today was the only place that it would take root and grow. And it's at least 3 feet tall. So it's doing great right there where it's at. He called it butterfly weed growing up. We called it pleurisy root. And it does go by those names. Those are two of the most popular names. The scientific name for it is, let's see if I can pronounce it, Asclepias. Asclepias tuberosa. So, I've been saying it a little wrong. I kind of butcher some of these names anyway. The scientific names, but I'm working to get better on that. But I do research every herb, even if it's dandelion. Sometimes I just want to see all the wonderful properties of dandelion. So I'll look it up in this medical herbalism book, and I'll research other avenues, the internet, and other books that I have. And friends that I know that are herbalists and who live this lifestyle, I'll pick their brains. And I will find out as much as I can about any particular herb that I like to use. I have quite a bit of experience in using herbs, gathering herbs in my family background. Mainly my mother, but also my father's family. Yes, so that's a plus. And one of the greatest tips that I can ever share with you when you start an herbalism journey is learn how to identify your plants. That's the thing you've got to know. You've got to know without any kind of doubt that what plant you are thinking it is accurately identified. That's the most important thing you can do with your plants. Now that pleurisy root is easily identified. Once you learn what that is, there's pretty much not anything that can make you think that it's another plant. It's pretty unique in its properties. And I don't know of any other plant that's quite like that. So that's wonderful to know. But there are many plants that look alike, so you want to be sure you're correctly identifying. And there's so many wonderful ways to identify a plant now. Not only are there books and just information leaflets that you can pick up on identifying plants in your area, but also the internet. I mean, there are so many apps that can tell you you can take a picture of, and that app will tell you what that plant is. And you can research it that way, and then it will tell you plants that look a lot like that plant, and it'll also tell you the toxic plants. And you want to just research. You can't do enough. Even if you've been using this herb for a very, very long time, maybe all of your life when you were growing up, it still is wonderful to research, and then you will know the properties of the plant that you're looking at. It's just like looking at this, researching in this book this today so that I could be sharing accurate information with you, and going here and it says don't use if you're pregnant. You want to know that. If you're pregnant or trying to get pregnant, don't want to take anything that would adversely affect that. That's a major point to know. You want to know that this is a major anti-inflammatory herb. So it's just by using a little of this herb in the appropriate way, you're going to fight inflammation. And it's a relaxing expectorant herb. So that would be a natural way to make a cough medicine, wouldn't it? It would help get out some of the phlegm and some of the moisture if you were sick, and we're dealing with a lot of that. So that's excellent. And then to research in every way that you can. I know the Native Americans did use this herb because, as I shared with you, my great-grandma on my mother's side was 50% Native American. One of her parents was fully Native American. So that's what I wanted to share with you today about the wonderful pleurisy root, or the Euslepia P.S. tuberosa. Excuse me. I will say that enough that I will have that. Excuse me for a minute. Still fighting the end of this cold. Not feeling bad, just having, a lot of it's breaking up, coming up, and I'm having to deal with it. Thank you for letting me share this pleurisy root with you. Let me share this herb with you and some things about my family using it. I love to do that. I love to share the herbs. It's so much a part of me. My channel is about lifestyle, budget-friendly home and garden. Now, the lifestyle part includes a lot of the way that I grew up as an Appalachian. I grew up in the Appalachians, and I'm still down here at the foothills in the Appalachians. I didn't realize that until I researched on the map where we live. I thought I had moved away from the Appalachian Mountains because we were so in the middle of them. Growing up, but I realize now that we are here at the bottom of the Appalachian Mountains still. Of course, we still take day trips to family's land, day trips to go spend time in the Appalachians at least once every week. It seems like we always make our way back to the mountains to visit family and to forage and gather things that we're used to using there, and we bring them back here. We do have a lot of good things growing here also. I am able to forage quite a bit of wonderful herbs that I grew up using and that I just know and use on a daily basis, and that's a wonderful thing. So the lifestyle part of my channel is growing up as an Appalachian. I'm budget friendly. I always take the budget friendly route. I do not go the most expensive route ever. And if I do, I'll let you know that this is the most expensive, costly way, that you don't have to do it this way. But 9 times out of 10, because I practice a budget-friendly life, I share a budget-friendly life with you guys. If that's secondhand shopping, if that's making use of what you have, whatever it might be, I try to share that with you on my channel. And then home and garden, because that is so much a part of my life. My home has always been a priority, and gardening has helped with that. It's helped feed my family. It's brought me beauty. It's added to my medicinal apothecary and tea cabinet. And I love the garden. Actually, today I have been out in the garden, and it has brought me such joy this morning. And I did promise you a video on this pleurisy root because I think it's such an amazing thing that's just growing on the side of the road. It's an amazing plant that's all around us right now. It's blooming right now with those big, beautiful bunches of orange flowers that are eye-catching, and my husband loves it, so we have that in our garden, even though I don't use that herb on a routine basis. Now, I do use goldenrod, I do use mullein, and other anti-inflammatory respiratory things that are good for your respiratory system, and I share those on my channel. I've shared some of those on my channel. But I appreciate you coming along for the journey today, and let me share all of this with you. Let me know your thoughts. Like always, I love your comments. I appreciate you being here, and I will see you next time. Like always, until next time.